It's been almost half a century since Bruce Lee's martial arts classic Enter the Dragon was released into theatres, and it is rightly regarded as a benchmark of the genre. Even to those without an interest in film censorship, it is probably fair to say that it is somewhat common knowledge that Enter the Dragon was subject to cuts in Britain, just as casual film lovers are no doubt aware of the video nasties era and the fact that many horror films were once heavily cut or banned in the UK. What may not be so widely known is just how much was cut from Enter the Dragon and on how many separate occasions. There have been at least 4 different versions of the film released in the UK, each with varying degrees of censorship, and we'll be discussing the cuts made to each of them in this episode of the series. Enter the Dragon was first submitted for a UK theatrical release in August 1973, just 1 month after Bruce Lee's untimely death. Stephen Murphy was the secretary of the BBFC at the time, and he felt that the film offered violence solely for the sake of entertainment, without any contextual justification. Although Murphy acknowledged the fact that the film was fantastical in nature, he felt that the level of brutality and sadism could only be accommodated at the adults-only X rating. Even at the highest classification, he stated that cuts were required to various scenes of so-called excessive violence, as well as various imitable techniques. As a result, a cuts list was drawn up on August the 14th, with cuts demanded in almost every reel of the picture. In the end, following discussions with the distributors, the necessary cuts were whittled down to specific scenes in reels 3, 4 and 5, with the BBFC mostly asking for general reductions as opposed to outright removal of entire scenes. Let's take a look at how the original UK cinema version may have played out following these cuts. Regrettably, we did not have access to an original cinema print for this episode, but using the BBFC's cuts list as a guide, along with our extensive background research, we have done our best to create approximations of how the censored UK cinema version may have played out following the implementation of cuts in 1973. The first changes made to the film occurred when the villain Han decrees that his guards have proven themselves less than worthy in allowing Lee to secretly investigate the island the night prior, and so makes them face off against his prize fighter, Bolo. The uncut version contains the following material. For the UK cinema version, the BBFC demanded,
reduce the episode in which the guards have to defend their honour. Remove scenes in which Bolo grabs a man's hair and breaks his neck, breaks a man's spine by crushing him, and sight of 2 dead bodies carried away.
As a result, the censored version may have played something like this.
Are you shocked, Mr. Williams?
Shortly afterwards, Lee fights O'Hara, the villain responsible for the death of Lee's sister. In the uncut version, the vengeful scene plays as follows.
O'Hara! O'Hara!
For the UK cinema version, the BBFC demanded,
reduce the sequence in which Lee fights O'Hara, especially removing the shot in which O'Hara is spread-eagled in the air and kicked in the crotch. Remove scene in which O'Hara smashes 2 bottles to use them as weapons and is kicked in the face and stomped to death.
With these cuts applied, a censored version of the scene plays thus.
O'Hara!
Reel 4 saw the next changes, beginning with the scene in which Williams fights Han. The uncut version plays as follows. For the UK cinema version, the BBFC cuts demanded
reduce the long fight between Han and Williams to the minimum necessary for continuity.
Again, it is not possible to know precisely what was removed, but a cut version of the scene based on this change, removing BBFC no-nos like imitable techniques, blows to the head, and so-called excessive violence, plays as follows. The next cuts occurred later in Reel 4, in scenes concerning Lee's second nighttime infiltration into Han's underground lair. The uncut version plays as follows. With regards to this scene, the BBFC cut stated,
reduce Lee's battle with the guards, especially removing shots in which he kicks one and breaks his neck.
Taking this into account, a cut version of the scene plays as follows. The final cuts demanded of Enter the Dragon for its UK cinema release occur in Reel 5 during the final showdown between Roper and Bolo. Again, the uncut version plays as follows. For the X-rated cinema version, the BBFC demanded,
reduce the fight between Roper and Bolo, especially removing the shot of Bolo being kicked in the crotch to fall dead.
Our approximation of the cut UK cinema version follows. Following the necessary changes required by the BBFC, Enter the Dragon was passed X on October the 23rd, 1973. The BBFC do not indicate the total amount of footage that was removed. The decision to make cuts to the film attracted various complaints at the time of the film's release in the UK. On the one hand, some members of the British public still felt it was too violent and, unusually, that it might encourage people to try kung fu for criminal purposes. Furthermore, the success of the film raised fear among certain members of the public at the spread of the use of nunchaku and other martial arts weaponry amongst violent youths in London who were apparently trying to emulate Bruce Lee. In 1975, James Furman became secretary of the BBFC after Stephen Murphy had resigned from the position. Ever mindful of public concerns, Furman honed in on the negative media coverage surrounding Enter the Dragon and asked the distributors to recall the film in 1979 so that further cuts could be made. He requested that they remove the sight of nunchaku being used in the main fight in Han's underground lair, as well as removing sight of the weapon from the film's trailer and promotional posters. The poster changes consisted of changing the nunchaku held between Lee's hands into a bow stick. Such was Furman's disturbance. These changes were arguably a case of closing the stable door after the horse had bolted, given that the film had been available at the time for over half a decade with all of the nunchaku footage intact. In addition, following consultation with law enforcement, the BBFC decided that the sight of nunchaku should be removed from films entirely from this point forward in order to discourage the spread of their use. The BBFC's policy on the outright removal of all sight of martial arts weaponry continued well into the 1980s and 1990s, with special regard to home video releases, where videos risked being viewed by underage viewers or having scenes played out of context. Prior to the introduction of the Video Recordings Act 1984, Enter the Dragon was released uncut on video in the early 1980s without a BBFC certificate, and was even shown uncut on British television. Following the implementation of the VRA, the film was required to be classified by the BBFC for video, and it was submitted for a rating in the late 1980s in its uncut version. Naturally, cuts were demanded to the film for home viewing. Some of the original cinema cuts from 1973 were waived, namely those made to the fights between Lee and O'Hara, Han and Williams, and Roper and Bolo, but the sight of Bolo's killing of 2 guards in Reel 3 was still censored. James Furman demanded that the cuts he ordered in 1979 to the sight of nunchaku be replicated on video. This included any scenes showing the weapon being carried, as well as its appearance in fight sequences. What follows is a compilation of affected scenes in the uncut version, followed by a summary of the new cuts that were decreed by Furman on video, and then examples of those same scenes after BBFC cuts had been made.
The battle with the guards was magnificent. Your skill is extraordinary. And I was going to ask you to join us.
Remove the following. Guard swings chain stick as Lee hides and same chain stick seen again. Huge man Bolo grabs guard's hair and breaks his neck. Bolo breaks guard's spine. In cellars, guard holds chain stick. In attack by guards, one holds a chain stick. Lee grabs chain stick, swings it and hits guard with it. He later sits trapped in a pit holding chain sticks.
After the removal of offending footage, Enter the Dragon was classified 18 for a VHS release on January the 31st, 1988, after 105 seconds of cuts. The back cover of the videotape featured a prominent note that the film was a BBFC edited version. During the 1990s, public concern about the depiction of nunchaku declined, whilst fears about more accessible weapons, such as knives, increased. As a result, in 1991 the BBFC changed their blanket ban policy on the depiction of martial arts weaponry, and a number of representations of nunchaku in various films were permitted, but only when they were actually not in use, were displayed in non-violent demonstrations of skill, or when their appearance served to establish the nature of a film's character. In spite of the modification to the BBFC's outright ban on martial arts weaponry in 1991, when Enter the Dragon was resubmitted for a video rating in 1993, Furman's cuts to nunchaku being used were still upheld. The cuts made to Bolo's killing of the two guards were waived, as were the various scenes of guards carrying the weapon that were cut in 1988. However, Bruce Lee's twirling of the weapon in Han's underground lair was still removed, with Furman demanding,
"In battle between hero and guards, reduce Bruce Lee's use of chain sticks to minimum necessary to provide continuity, as follows. 1. After Lee takes chain sticks away from Man in Blue, cut away while they're still wrapped around stick in Lee's hand, removing all sight of Lee twirling them and resuming on Man in Blue reacting. 2. After Man in Blue attacks Lee with a baseball bat and Lee defends himself with chain sticks, cut away as Lee turns, resuming on empty frame just before he enters."
Following 21 seconds of cuts, Enter the Dragon was past 18 for a widescreen video release on November the 10th, 1993. These same cuts were also demanded of the full-screen 1996 video release, which was passed on January the 26th of that year. For the film's 25th anniversary, Warner Bros. Reinstated some extra non-contentious material from the Chinese version of the film that had been missing from the film's original theatrical version in the West. This extended version was released on VHS in Britain in 1998, and later on DVD, but the film had been pre-cut before submission to the BBFC in order to remove the offending 21 seconds of nunchaku usage that had been cut from the 1993 widescreen submission. This extended version was past 18 without any further cuts on November the 13th, 1998. A mere year later, a rather important change occurred at the BBFC. In their own words, the BBFC state,
"In order for its policies to remain relevant and in tune with public feeling, the BBFC regularly reviews and adjusts them accordingly when issuing a new set of guidelines." In 1999, the previous firm distinction between martial arts and other weapons was abandoned in favour of a more context-based, proportionate approach. Nevertheless, depictions of offensive weapons continue to be liable to cuts if they're considered likely to encourage violent behaviour in the real world.
With this new policy in place, Enter the Dragon was later resubmitted for a DVD classification in its extended version from 1998, but this time with all of the previously censored BBFC footage intact. All cuts were waived, and it was passed uncut on July the 31st, 2001. This version is now the standard version available on home video in the UK and can be safely purchased by all fans seeking the film without fear of any BBFC cuts. As an aside, it is worth mentioning that all currently available home video versions of Enter the Dragon available on DVD and Blu-ray only feature the extended version of the film that was released for its 25th anniversary. This version has numerous changes made to the soundtrack, including alterations to the musical score and sound effects. The original theatrical cut, as released in the West, which runs for approximately 99 minutes, is not available on DVD or Blu-ray, and the sound has been remixed from the original mono into multi-channel 5.1 surround. For purists, the unavailability of both the original theatrical cut and the original mono soundtrack is lamentable, and, sadly, is not something that the distributors appear to care about supplying fans in the foreseeable future.